All right, my friends, here we are once again. Apologies for the incessant delays. I just got back yesterday, but hopefully you guys are feeling good, and hopefully my computer desktop audio is still working. Everything's looking good. Yeah, thank you for popping by on a Thursday. We got Sweet Steez in here, Kat, we got Cora. Cora has been chilling since his boss is away, and now he's at work, swinging that thing. I don't know exactly what he's referring to there, but when the cat is away, the mouse plays. Is that the original quote? Is that where it comes from? When the cats are away, the mice will play. Interesting. I have not heard Eminem's latest track, Houdini. Audio's good, awesome. But yeah, today we are doing the sample challenge. I know a lot of folks enjoy the sample challenge. This one is a little bit different in that I gave you basically a set of drum sounds that you had to use for your beats. And I'm interested to see what the outcome of this challenge is. And other than that, though, hopefully you guys are having a good week. I'm probably going to post the next challenge later today just to give you guys enough time. And that is about it. Kai, how's it going? Before I forget, we do have the top 3 submitters for the last 7 days. We have Paulie, Sam, and Marco. So they are guaranteed to get their beats reviewed in the stream. And then I believe the remaining people, Cora will review tomorrow, as well as a handful of the other beats that you guys submitted. That's pretty much it. Kai enjoys a new Eminem song. I'll say that I've never been. Sherb is here. How's it going, Sherb? I'll say I've never been a big Eminem fan personally. When I went back to listen to the Slim Shady LP for that one video that I did on him a few months back, I did grow to appreciate the sort of what he brought to hip hop that was a little bit different. But I remember seeing like a tweet recently that talked about how a lot of Eminem's older music compared to like the other legends or top fives, a lot of people quote, his music has not aged as well. And when I listen to a lot of the stuff outside of that album, I would say that I would probably agree. I prefer the Toby one over Houdini. Curious to see how this album turns out. Never been an Eminem fan either, says Kai. But yeah, let's just go ahead and jump into these beats. Let me know if you guys have any questions or concerns or anything that's on your mind. Feel free to express yourself. M and 50 were my first introductions to rap, so they'll always have a place in my heart. Yeah, that's fair. I think a lot of people feel that way about 50 Cent. It's interesting to see how 50 has just completely stepped away from rap, which was very interesting. So let's start off with one of the guaranteed beats. We'll start with Paulie G, since I believe he was number 1. Mr. 90% by Paulie G. Before we jump in, was there anything else that I had to talk about? I don't think so. We'll probably have another one of those mini contests soon. This week was a little bit off in that we had to do the stream on Thursday, so I'll give you like a normal beat. I'll probably just do like a free-for-all beat submission for the next one, and then we'll probably do a contest in that time. Although, wait. Actually, yeah, we'll do a contest in that time then. And that will be it for the next few streams. Paulie G, Many Men is such a banger. Many Men is a fantastic song that I enjoy to this day. Anyways, let's just take a listen to what Paulie has come up with the sample challenge here. And feel free to share your thoughts and opinions. right, that's Mr. 90% by the one and only Paulie. It's like people are afraid to submit their beats, or maybe it's because summer vacations. I do remember this is like what year is this? Year 3 now that we're with Better Beatmaker. Summers, I did usually notice slow down a little bit. People usually are a little bit more into it during like the fall and winter. Spring as well, but summer I do recall being a little bit slower, which is fine. That just means more chances for you to get your beats reviewed, and especially if we do a contest, more chances to win. Sweet Steez says, let's go. This reminds me of the song Pyro by Denzel and Kenny Beats. Already liking this, Sweet Steez. Paulie is really starting to develop his own characteristic sound. Really nice. I definitely agree. Immediately recognizable. I agree, says Kat. Love the aesthetic of the beat. I feel some of the chops are out of key. Maybe just a lot of flutter and artistic choice for added tension, says Cora. It was cool, but there's something that felt a bit off, like the chopped keys. Agree that he's finding his own sound really nice. Yeah, I think I definitely know what you guys are talking about. I picked up on the same thing. To talk about like what the actual sample challenge was, good job of processing those drums. I think the drums felt very forward and they cut through. There's a lot of body to them. So I think Paulie did a good job of taking the sample and actually doing the right steps with those drums to get them to actually feel hip-hop-ish. Great secondary ideas within this beat as well. I really like those bells and that sort of synthy string that was like moving around and had like a little bit of modulation on it. That was a really unique idea. The small little thing that I felt was that the beat, I sort of wish that there's a little bit more brightness. It felt as though none of the instruments or sounds had enough sort of color on them. It was overall a bit dark. So on the drums, maybe even just adding a slight bit of brightness to the snare and the hi-hat with some slight bit crushing, that could have been enough. But I do feel as though the big thing to me, as you guys pointed out, the POI to me was that sort of upwards piano, the keys. And it did feel as though maybe some of those notes were off, or it was just overall just not, the sort of tension never sort of relieved itself. I think, the pattern, or maybe just the notes specifically, just did not feel like they sort of jived with me. So I think maybe just changing that pattern up. What do you guys think? Is it just the wrong notes that are being played, or is it just too much tension, not enough release? Because it goes da-da, da-da-da. So I wonder if just like adding a note at the end, like a da-da, da-da-da-da, maybe that would be enough to sort of give us that resolution that we're constantly hoping for. I think maybe just altering that pattern slightly could bring the idea together a little bit. Chorus says maybe that's what felt off, just too many frequencies masking, causing them all to sit together and feel a little bit more out of key without resolving tension. I think the latter, says Kat. Yeah, so I think just slight adjustments to those patterns, but I do feel as though what you guys are saying is definitely on point. Paulie is coming together and creating his own sound, which is really awesome to see in real time. And he did a great job with those drums within the sample. I think just the POI has a little bit of a sort of adjustment that needs to be done to it. And I think that can be enough to bring everything together. And those brighter frequencies, like I mentioned. Always good to hear a Paulie G beat. Let's zoom up to the next one. Let's get Paulie off the wheel and spin it up. Here we go, guys. Next up is Kai. It is Kai, who might be at work right now, on a call as usual. Let's take a listen to what Kai has for us.
Pitching drums outside was my 9 to 5. I wake a sleeping giant up and chop him down the side. Sweep the street and mop it up, won't make it out alive. Big drum on my 4-5, that's a giant slide. Concrete your Bodie James, Yola gang, Bonnie Clyde. Wanted by the homicide. Only time my mama lied when cops died. When she last saw me, off her out of drag. Last night somebody said they caught me hopping out the rag. Slide down on the op, pop his top, drop his gas. Cutting up with that chainsaw, we did the cha-cha slide. Same niggas chasing clout who still think.
All right, that's Kai's beat, the drummer. How's it going to you, Roy? Just woke up. Good to have you here. Feeling that swing on the drums. Very cool pocket, says Cora. Kai is here. Interesting. Good to have you, Kai, and not have you worrying about your work calls and whatnot. It's strange, but I mess with it. Says Cat sounds like something Earl would hop on, like the warp and reversed melody. I really like what he did with the drums. Not sure about the rest of the sound choices. Not sure the rest of the sound choices work as they feel too off kilter. But that switch up is nice. Like that part a lot. This is one of my weirdest beats, I'd say. I appreciate getting to hear it with vocals. Great use of cutting out the snare for moments for unexpected variation. Drums may just seem a little bit buried with the melodies having mainly sustained sounds. Interesting point. Off kilter is a good way to put it. It could be good or bad depending on the listener. So yeah, I felt the same way in that I liked all the processing within this beat. I think Kai did a good job of creating really unique sounds and putting them all together. So I definitely appreciated that idea. And like you talked about, the sort of off-kiltered weirdness of it all was really fun to listen to. The drums, I would say I also liked the processing on them as well. There were times when the snares weren't sort of cutting through, but I don't necessarily think that's with the way this beat was constructed. You have all these really big sounds, so sometimes the drums will have to be a little bit more secondary. So it wasn't as if they completely vanished. It sort of felt a little bit like a stylistic choice, but I would agree with what Sherb mentioned, which is that to me, the thing that sort of didn't really connect and sort of had this beat feeling more like an arrangement of sounds was that there was just a lack of progression. So it was hard for me to understand, like, what is this beat trying to get across? What's the feeling I'm supposed to feel? And to what Sherb mentioned, he really enjoyed the switch up, the latter part of the beat, and I think I would agree. And mainly the reason why is because at that point we started to actually have a progression. So in the first half, it just sort of feels like it's a flat, sort of atonal beat. But once we get to the second part of the beat, get a little bit of switch up with the musicality to something that actually changes now, musically speaking. So it goes da da. So I feel like that is partly why I and possibly Sherb also felt as though the second half of the beat worked a little bit better, and that there was actually a sort of progression that conveyed a little bit more feeling as opposed to it feeling like in a sort of random assortment of sounds. So I think even when you do have this approach where, you know, you want it to be a little bit wishy-washy and a little bit out there and sort of esoteric, I do still feel as though having some instrument change and sort of introduce some progression into your beat is typically going to be a good idea. Chorus says the vocals made the melody seem like they would work a lot better than the standalone glued it together. Yeah, I had vocals in case it was hard to imagine someone rapping on it. I did sort of feel as though I could see someone rapping on it. I think with the sound placement and everything felt as though it had a good amount of space in its own pocket. I just do feel as though having some progression in the beat, even if it's a very simple one, just like a two-step progression, I think just having that is enough to introduce some feeling that helps the listener sort of guide them along, melodically speaking. Yeah, really cool processing in this beat. I really appreciate the uniqueness and the weirdness of it. But like I mentioned, even when things are weird and unique, just having some of those fundamentals in place of, does this song have a progression, can really help you pull off those weird, unique ideas, but still have it be understandable to the listener. Let's spin another one, and then after that, we'll make sure we'll get to another one of the top 3ers. We got, is it T-Roy? The luckiest man. He wakes up, hops on the stream, and he's already getting his beat reviewed. Let's check out what T-Roy has in store for us. Right, that's T-Roy on the beat. Always has very fascinating videos with his beats. Let's see what the chat is saying. Feels like an old school early 90s hip hop R&B. Really like that section where those plucks were far away in depth. Both the Spanish flair, all in a good way. Focus, how's it going? Focus does have a beat that he submitted, not yet reviewed, so we'll see what happens there. Woo-hoo-hoo. I really like this. I'm having trouble identifying the POI. Feels like the piano and the guitar sit very forward, and finding it hard to pinpoint which one to focus my attention on. Great vibe. I like the emotion of the guitar and the processed keys. The dry keys feel a little bit out of place for me personally. Maybe just too many melodic changes too quickly. I was trying to make something different and just chilled. My only real comment is the guitar is a bit too bright and upfront. Wasn't sure I was in the right stream when I saw a full screen beach model. This is now a pornographic stream. I'll be sharing my not safe for work nudes with you guys. So yeah, I feel as though this beat, it's a reoccurring thing that I would say is happening with T-Roy's beat, where there's often an element that I really like in the beat and sounds phenomenal, but oftentimes just with the amount of changes and switch ups, it's hard to ever get a good sense of like connecting with the beat. Just like Kat mentioned, he's having a hard time identifying the POI. Sometimes it feels like it's the piano, sometimes it's the guitar. And I would say that I would encourage T-Roy to maybe take the next few challenges, sort of force yourself to choose a POI and have it consistently play throughout the beat. Because like I mentioned, one of the things that even Cora mentioned there, of just maybe too many melodic changes too quickly, and that's sort of the difficulty in getting the beats to sound like everything's in place. If you just choose one strong idea and you take that idea to build it across your whole beat, and you sort of play with adding and removing sounds from that sound, but having it constantly play, I think that would create so much more cohesion in your beats. For me, in this beat, like I really enjoyed the guitar, the plucked guitar idea here. Like, to me, this is a great POI that you could have built around. Like, there's a lot of personality with the guitar there, a lot of uniqueness, and it's positioned to be the POI. But then quickly, the sound goes away, and then we have these keys that come in that sound far less polished, and then the guitar comes back in, and we constantly have this sort of in and out. I get bored easy, I think. So I think this is, to me, whenever I see people sort of have that approach with their beats, it shows that they are not 100% convinced with their own ideas, and they sort of have this chaotic, sort of constantly changing frenetic type of approach with their arrangement because they're just not confident in their core idea. But when you listen to like pretty much 99% of hip hop, there's one core idea that's really strong within the beat, and everything else is centered around that core idea. Because hip hop is like a loop based genre. So, if you're trying to make EDM or something else like that, maybe having these constant switch ups wouldn't be such a sort of undermining technique. But I do feel as though when it comes to making beats, constantly changing things every few minutes, it really does undermine your beat. And I think constantly, week in, week out, we talk about this, where it's hard to really connect and get a good sense of what your beat is doing just because things are changing way too much. The reverse guitar part was actually super dope. Guitar sample is super nice, says Kat. So yeah, I think just taking that idea, having it play throughout the beat, and challenging yourself to figure out how to get your beats to sound interesting while maintaining a specific sound within your beat, I think is going to be extremely crucial, because it seems as though you're constantly sort of undermining your own ideas with this sort of boredom that you say you have. So even if you do feel as though you get bored, like, you can still make substantial amounts of changes and introduce different sounds into your beat, but you still do need that one constant idea that is pulling people in and constantly compelling, just because there are plenty of parts within this beat that I thought sounded phenomenal where the guitar was playing, but then whenever you'd lose that idea, like, I would just completely find myself disconnecting with like these ideas. None of these textures really feel all that interesting to me, and I'm just waiting for that guitar to come back. So yeah, next few assignments, really force yourself and push yourself and challenge yourself to pick one idea to sort of remain constant in your beats, and find out a way for you to feel as though the beat is dynamic and engaging enough around that idea, as opposed to just completely removing it and sort of replacing it with a bunch of secondary ideas that just don't feel as remarkable. Yeah, that's what I would say going forward. Awesome. Let us move on. Let's see what Marco has for us. I believe he was number 3 in the top 7 list. So Marco has been... it's been interesting to see what Marco's been doing. So he and I, in the Q&A call, let's quickly talk about this. He was really struggling probably like a month ago. You can see his views really dropped. He said he had a lot more views before. but then they dropped after like a few, I think 2 or 3 months with his channel. You can see he was getting 92 views, 100 views, 100 views. And then we sort of did a analysis on his channel, seeing what was working and what wasn't before. And in the past few weeks, you can see a lot of these videos have actually jumped up. So you have like 1.3 thousand, 1,000, 900, 600. So yeah, it's really awesome to see this changes that he's made to his channel have actually improved. And the biggest one that we talked about was the length of the actual titles was a big thing. So you can see super long titles here. And when we looked at his old high performing videos that did much better, shorter titles. And so it seems as though when he moved back to doing more short titles, a lot more of his beats are actually performing well. So yeah, really interesting to see. But as we always say, basically this is the idea of iterating, constantly trying out new ideas, seeing what works and what doesn't, and paying attention when things do work, trying to analyze and think critically about like what was the difference between this and the other thing. And just always, experimenting, changing just one thing, seeing how that works can really help your beats perform much better. So let's take a listen to this beat in particular called a Red Dot.
Quilo. It's getting dark.
Young Marco's beat. Let's see what the chat is saying. Interesting to see how he flipped these drums into drill. It still blows my mind how much a title can affect the algorithm. Yeah, so this is something that even the video that I put out 2 weeks ago, I merely I think I've shown you guys this data in the back end before in the marketing section of the course, but just like it was pretty much flatlining. It wasn't performing well. Let's see if I can actually just pull this up here. One second. So what was happening was I let it run for like the first 2 days and it wasn't really performing that great. So you can see the blue line is what it was doing, and then the sort of faint gray line here is like the average my videos do. So the first 2 days it wasn't really performing well. And then I decided to change the title a little bit. Before it was like top 5, I think it was like the 5 mistakes that are ruining your beats. Yeah, wasn't really doing all that well. and then I changed the title to The Science Why Your Beats Are Awful. And then you can see it's slightly changed the trajectory, but to the point where now it's like outperforming my average. So yeah, small little changes to titles like that can be such a huge game changer, as well as changing your actual thumbnail. With Marco's beats here, we looked at his old thumbnails. They're very similar to this one, and they were performing better, so I didn't think the thumbnail iteration was the first step to worry about. We just talked about doing the actual titles instead. But yeah, I definitely do agree that it is extremely tantamount to play around with your titles. And the great thing about YouTube is, like, I know with like TikTok and stuff like that, as soon as you put your content out there, that's pretty much it. You're kind of done for. With YouTube, it's constantly showing your videos to new people. And I also do believe if you make an adjustment to older videos, it will sort of give you a period of time where it'll start to push that to audiences as well. So even just going into your old videos that you post up that haven't performed well and just using that as a ground to experiment, very, very helpful thing to do. So it's something I definitely encourage. Yeah. Back to the lab for some tweaking. For tweaking the beat, this goes hard, says T-Roy. Cool textures to that snare with the processing. I wish it had a little bit of brightness. Feels dull for the lack of a better word. I always like Marco's instrumentation, very atmospheric and dark. Personally, I'd probably layer another kick for some more punch. It's funny how we talk about kicks having more punch. How ironic. Layer them drums, says Sweet Steve. Solid beat, don't have anything really to say, says Focus. Love the beat. The snare felt weird after a while, but other than that, nothing else to say. The algorithm is a fickle mistress. Yeah, I don't know. I always feel as though whenever I put out a video and it doesn't perform well, I never blame the algorithm. Like, there's been so many instances, like I just showed you, where I'll post something up and then I'll just come up with a better title that people will actually be enticed by, and it actually performs much better. So for example, in MySpace right now, like a few years back, I was doing a lot of those videos of like 5 things that you need to know for XYZ, or, you know, the top 3 mistakes. But I've noticed in the sort of education space, a lot of people have grown tired of those types of titles. They just don't feel as interesting. And so shifting the way that I approach my titles to come up with something that's a little bit unique and yet explains a little bit unique in that, like, it's going to get people interested and pique their curiosity, but enough where it explains what the benefit of watching the video will be is really, really important. And so it's all about, it's not even the algorithm, because the algorithm is just a reflection of people's behaviors. Will they click it? Will they not? Do they watch? Do they not? Where do they stop? How long do they watch for? The algorithm is merely just understanding behavior of people in the audience and optimizing for it. And so I don't really necessarily think the algorithm is fickle. I think the audience is fickle, and the algorithm reflects that. And so it's my job as a creator, and your guys' job as well. So if you're trying to get into this space, even if you're trying to post up beats for Type Beats channels, it's always going to be your job to do something that's slightly different than what everyone else is doing. It's very interesting to see in the tutorial space, if, for example, you know, we're in a creative field where you're making beats, and yet so many people with their titles and thumbnails are non-creative. They just sort of do exactly what everyone else is doing, get the exact same results everyone else gets, and sort of blames the algorithm. Yeah, it's the same. Art is art. You have to create something that is good enough to be understandable, but different enough where it piques people's curiosity. And your thumbnails and titles are no different than your beats. You have to be the exact, you have to have the exact same ideas or approaches whenever you think about your creative decisions on that front as well. My guess is he would have layered the drums if not for the assignment, as I don't know if layering was acceptable. Yeah, so I think this is exactly what I sort of thought as I was going in with this challenge. First off, with Marco's beat, I absolutely love all the textures, the sort of vocal vocal textures that were used, the progression that was built with it felt completely on point. Loved the sort of 808 bass line. Everything worked, as you guys mentioned, except the snare. And this was sort of my intention with this, which was that something that I've come to believe and realize is that the drums that you choose really, really will dictate whether the beat that you create works or not, and which type of genre you're sort of going to be pushed towards. Because as we heard here, while everything else was structured in a very drill-esque way, just having the one snare not fit the aesthetic is enough to completely throw everything off and make things it sort of undermines the beat. And so if you are going to be forced to be using a certain type of drum, you will typically be better off making a very specific kind of beat. And I would say with this drum set that you guys were forced to use, we heard these types of drums fit much better with a sort of boom bap aesthetic. And whenever they're going to be used in something else, like a drill beat in this example, it can sort of easily undermine the idea. So, Mark did a phenomenal job of building everything else in this beat. I'm sure if this had a traditional drill snare, things would sound much more sort of complete and the idea would come together much better. But I do feel as though just that one idea, just the snare not fitting the aesthetic, and not being reshaped or changed to fit the aesthetic, maybe just pitching it up and having it be a lot shorter could have helped, adding a little bit of brightness as well, just like Cora mentioned, could have been enough. But yeah, I think this is a good display of just how important drums are in building the aesthetic of your beat. Very good point. I realize I go off thumbnails way more than titles. If the thumbnail looks lazy or generic, I assume the info in the video will be the same. That's really interesting. Yeah, it's like a reflection of what you can expect. I feel the exact same way whenever someone creates a thumbnail that is the exact same as everyone else. With a lot of thumbnails that I see in sort of the beat making space, it'll be like, the piano roll thumbnail, like the circle that has it zoomed in. Basically, everyone's sort of ripping off what I believe Jay Cactus has been really good at. They mimic his video thumbnails, and so whenever they don't get views, it's like, well, why would I watch that when I can watch like Jay Cactus, for example? So yeah, I think just figuring out, yeah, it's just good art all in general. Yeah, I didn't layer because of that. Yeah, fair enough. I think that was one of the rules. I think you had to use the drums as they are. So yeah, drums will push your beats into a specific genre. Something to constantly think about when it comes to drum selection. Jaden Jackson is up next. The Jaybird. I gotta pee real bad. Let's see if I can make it the rest of the stream without peeing my pants. All right, that was the Doghouse. That was Jaden's beat there. Let me quickly finish writing my thoughts. Okay. All right, let's see what the chat has to say about this beat. I didn't get the memo. I layered a kick. Scandalous. Full stream with no stream. The rest of the drums are quite prominent though. That was me 2 Fridays ago. Definitely a test of willpower to not piss yourself. Poll, should I go pee? The whole beat feels far away. I wonder if that was by design. Release him. I like this beat, great bones, but the low end feels like it's overtaking the beat in a bad way. I've been noticing with Jaden's beats that there seems to be a lot of low mids and mids missing. A lot of subs and somewhat high end, but no girth or density, if that makes sense. The drums feel a little too bright. Love the sound selection and idea though. Yeah, I feel as though me and Cora basically have the same ideas here, which is that I really love the textures and the idea within this beat. I think this has a good POI, for example, that sort of creepy, eerie child singing. I do feel as though that is enough to make the beat feel unique. So a good start using that sound, but I did feel as though there are missing frequency pockets for sure. Fundamentally, I think just having something in the sort of low mid to reinforce the progression within that sort of unique POI would have been enough. So when I say that, what I mean is you can hear that like the singing does have a progression on its own. So it goes da 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 da. So just having some sound be in the low mid that sort of follows that, doesn't have to be exact, but sort of reinforces that musical idea that is being created with that POI, and just having that sit in the low mid would probably be enough for this beat to sound complete and full. Like if it's like a simple piano or something, I think that would be enough. So that's one thing. Sweet Steve says, I didn't get a sense that the low end was overpowering the drums and the high end are for me though. Yeah, I think what is happening here is that they might have used like an extremely loud 808, but they dropped it down to like an extremely low octave to the point where even for me, I don't feel as though I can actually hear it. But I would imagine Sherb has a good system for monitoring the low end, and it's probably really coming through. And I noticed that, let's see if I can find it again. So here the volume of that POI is somewhat low, but there, it jumps up in volume here. So what that tells me is that there are a lot of frequencies by the that are being supplied and introduced by that 808 that aren't actually being heard. And it's all being squashed by the limiter. So you can imagine the limiter is saying no sounds are going to go over this volume here. And when we have that 808, it's filling up so much space, but with frequencies that we can actually hear, that everything else sounds lower in volume just because the 808 is taking up so much room. But as soon as that 808 drops out, you can hear the rest of the sounds jump up in volume because they don't have to they aren't being undermined by that 808, so you can hear that jump up again around here. So right here. So that singing gets much louder now that the 808's not there. Yeah, so be careful with your 808s. You sort of want most of the frequency presence to be north of 40 to 60. Anything lower, you're just sort of wasting space because most people aren't going to be able to hear or actually monitor that in their speakers. And all those frequencies, they go somewhere. They are still in the beat. And so that's exactly why you're having that issue. I have earbuds on at work and it's very subby for me for sure. Just a constant rumble, that's a bit distracting. Yeah, so I think switching out that 808 for something that, like I mentioned, like this is a modern boom bap beat, so maybe something that fits that aesthetic a little bit more. But even if it is an 808, it's sitting in a completely wrong octave from what I can gather. So just bumping that up into a higher octave so it's not completely subby will be an idea as well. But again, I think for a modern boom bap type of beat, a different sub or a different bass sound altogether would probably be a better idea. All right. Whoops, sorry about that. Also want to point out for that last beat, Sherb is up next. For that last beat, really good job of creating your own pattern for the drums. Yeah, I thought the pattern fit the aesthetic, so you did a good job of changing the pattern to fit what you're going for there. So good job to Jaden on that for sure. Now let us see what the Sherb man has for us. Meister, Haunted Keys. Cora, so Sweet Steve says, interesting stuff about the 808 frequencies. I just have regular headphones, so I guess I couldn't really hear it. Yeah, I have, my monitoring system's not very good for picking up really, really low end and the subby stuff, but I did pick up on that weird volume fluctuation, so that's what sort of jumped out to me as a sort of symptom of what often is a result of too many frequencies that are too subby that don't actually help the beat. What would you go for modern boom bap? Dirty synth bass guitar, smooth synth bass, etc. Personally, I often hear bass guitars for those types of beats. And it's interesting that oftentimes it's not even necessarily extremely full bass, or sorry, extremely full sub frequencies with those bass guitars. It's oftentimes like a very weak sounding bass guitar, and I'll actually have like an 808 layered underneath every once in a while, but it's not the sort of same approach that you would have with a trap beat where, you know, the 808 pattern's going up and down and the whole sort of bass pattern is sort of being pushed or being filled by the 808. It's usually just like one note every 2 or 4 bars. So yeah, I don't think like a distorted 808 would be the right fit for that type of beat, or what Jay had with that beat where it was a over the top subby frequency 808 that was constantly playing throughout the beat. I don't really see that idea within that aesthetic. So yeah, I think that's more of a trap idea. Just saw my name on the wheel, but I have no recollection of what I handed in. Yeah, check out a few minutes ago. I believe that was 2 beats ago. It was reviewed. Snare might be a bit too hot, but overall I think this is great. Awesome work on the piano. Damn nice change. It was dope. Drums go hard. Love the pattern. Agree on the snare at times. It doesn't seem to be constant though. Your finger drum. Do you finger drum? I love the quiet parts, but are still filled by the atmosphere of the reverb ending. I chopped up the drums and rearranged them at times. Yeah, so with this beat, I really enjoyed the sort of textures that were in this beat. We had like pianos and bells. Nothing felt as though it was stock. Really interesting patterns that were built with them as well. Sweet Steve says, I don't even know how that's possible. Sure, but amazing stuff. The drum work with this was really, really great and on point. You did a good job of creating a full sounding drum pattern. I will say though, for me, it felt as though the ideas with the piano, while they brought in a really cool amount of uniqueness, I did feel as though I had a hard time sort of feeling what the progression was once again, where it was just this constant back and forth between these really unique ideas with the piano, but were they actually providing a sense of progression within this beat, or was anything? I had a hard time hearing that. I guess the sort of piano stabs should be doing that, but I think there's just a missing, maybe the issue is like a missing frequencies within the low mid. It sounds as though you might have shaved some frequencies with an EQ for those piano stabs that might have otherwise really helped that feel as though it's supplying a good progression. This might be an issue with my subs though, so maybe you're trying to supply that with your subbier bass, but I'm having a hard time hearing it on my end. So I do think it is an issue of missing frequencies possibly in the low mid, but I do feel as though I actually get a good sense of the progression with your bell idea that comes in later on. So here I feel as though I can hear those frequencies a lot more. Especially this part here. I really like the balance here. If you just had drums playing that part, I feel as though this would equate to a more full beat. That sort of haunted pad kind of feels like it gets in the way. So yeah, think there's some really, really cool ideas in here. I think just the small little details within this beat sort of need to make sure you do, make sure you sort of get those sounds to do their job, so to say. Whenever you have those stabs with the piano, maybe not shaving off that much frequencies, or boosting those lower mid frequencies would make sense. Those are drums in the background filtered. So not that sound. I get that sort of booming is the drums that are filtered. I'm talking about that constant droning sound in the back that even exists at this part as well. It sounds like a ghost wailing in the background. Like, I feel as though at this part of the beat, it makes sense because you've dropped out so much. But for this part of the beat, for example, I'm guessing what's happening here, actually, now that I think about it, is that sound seems to be filling the low mid. But the issue with it is that it's not supplying an actual progression, whereas the sound that is supplying an actual progression, you've cut a lot of those frequencies out. So I probably would have just gotten rid of that wailing sound and just saved it for like this part of the beat here. And then for the other part of the beat, just really bring in those frequencies with the stabby piano. I think that probably would have resulted in a better balance. Was struggling on this beat for 2 weeks, got it done in the 11th hour. So yeah, I think that's the thing that jumped out to me. Like I mentioned, though, I really love the textures and the ideas, that sort of upwards piano that comes in every once in a while. Really cool idea. That idea there, I really, really enjoyed. So yeah, I think just the way you filled up the spaces in your beat, just a slight adjustment to those, I think, would have resulted in a beat that made a little bit more sense in terms of, I feel like I've said this word a billion times this stream, but the underlying progression is very important. We'll finish up with the top 3 years. We'll obviously keep going, but let's listen to Sam's beat next here.
Patterns is actually the name of the game. What drum pattern or beat style the drummer selects is often your tip-off as to what kind of music you're hearing.
That was Sam's beat there. Unfortunately, short-lived, but learning a lot this stream, says Kai. It's worth going back. And hopefully that point made sense. That I talked about in Sherb's beat there, that droning sound that filled up the low mid. It takes up a lot more room, and I think that's part of the reason why you guys said that sort of snare ended up becoming a little bit more overwhelming. I think just having that constant droning sound ended up filling up a lot of space in the beat, and so just getting rid of that supplying those frequencies with that stabby sound that actually is pushing that progression forward, because oftentimes it is the case where the sound within the low mid is often the sound that also supplies the progression. So yeah, doing those two things with that stabby sound, getting rid of that drone, I think would have equated into a better, more balanced beat. Damn, this is hard. Run the jewels, effing nice. Like how he incorporated several parts of the sample. This is wild, almost has the aggression of an underground East Coast, while some groovy, funky elements of the West Coast. Well, it all works incredibly together. Yeah, I honestly don't have anything critical to say about this beat. Fantastic idea, great positioning of all the sounds. Love all the processing on every single sound, especially the drums. Those drums sounded fantastic. Love the atmosphere work, all the small details like those small stutters and stuff. Like Core mentioned, it has like that sort of boom bap feeling with the drums. But that sort of, I don't know what that is, like that synth that has that peeling filter on it. That right there. Very West Coast. Just such a cool, unique idea here. I think this is probably my favorite beat that I've heard from Sam. Just knocked it out of the park. Like I really have nothing critical to say other than what T-Roy mentioned, which was it was too short because I was enjoying it too much and I wanted to hear some more. Yeah, like the arrangement was on point as well. Very clear ideas of what the verse and the hook sounds like. I could definitely hear this being like a standout track on a rapper's album. Super full sounding. Everything has its perfect place. Yeah, like if this was on like a Kendrick Lamar album or like a Griselda album, I think this would be one of the songs that I'd like listen to over and over again because that was really awesome. The only thing I can say is that he probably layered a kick. You know what? Kai has a point. This beat now has a 0 out of 10 rating because you cheated on the drums. How could you? Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing Sam's next beat here. Let's continue spinning it up though. So far I have not soiled my pants, which is good. So Marco was also reviewed. We'll probably get through most of these beats. I think we'll probably get through all of them for this stream. But let's take a short little break here to talk about life, guys. Let me know what's going on in your guys' life. Hopefully you're having a good summer so far. Any vacation plans, let me know. I plan on going to New York actually next month, which is why I have to shift some of those dates for the actual beat contest. So I was thinking maybe I'll announce the contest on the 25th and maybe we'll have the stream on the 8th or something. And also give you guys time to vote on the beats as well, since that's important. Is that a quality statement nowadays, not soiling your pants? That's me being polite. I thought you were going to the bathroom. This is going to be a quick ad break. I mean, I could pee myself if you guys want. We can do an ad break together. Life is weird, says Sweet Steez. It sure is. But yeah, maybe an update on the plugin that I mentioned before. My developer tells me we are about a month or so away, hopefully, on getting a finalized beta that I'm going to start testing with. So I'm going to need your guys' help to do some testing. I'll make an announcement within school, but yeah, I want to test the functionality, make sure nothing breaks when you use this thing. Also want to test out the payment system. So right now we're going to be offering like a 30-day trial. And then it will lock after that. So I want to test that to make sure that all works. For you guys, since you're testing, I'll probably give you like 90% off on the plugin if you are a willing tester. Yeah, like I mentioned, the reason why it's not 100% off is because part of the thing I want to test is the payment processing make sure that works as well. So hopefully you guys are cool with paying like I don't know, $5 or $10, whatever it will be for this thing. A fraction of what it will be for the full price. But yeah, good summer so far in the land of no air conditioning and 36 degrees Celsius. Jeez, where is that at? That's a whole different stream. No AC at almost 100 degrees Fahrenheit. 115 in Arizona. Damn. But yeah, that's basically where I'm at right now. I'm looking forward to the plugin. I'm curious to see how this pans out. I know a lot of people, even myself, there's a little bit of worry and apprehension over piracy and whatnot, but I feel as though, I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but over the last few years, it feels as though there's a lot more sort of advocacy towards actually paying for your plugins. There's always going to be people that will not pay, and I definitely see that happening with this plugin. But yeah, I'm hoping that this is a business endeavor that is successful and that this is a product that people will actually want. I know it's something that I want and I use a ton whenever I make beats. So hopefully people who are sample-based producers are the same way. You know what? While you guys talk about different degrees and air conditioning, I'm going to quickly go urinate. So I'll be right back, guys. All right, that was well needed. I said something and I forgot what it was. What was I gonna say? Huh? Now we can be glad he doesn't use a lav mic. All right, I should have played that beat again. That would have been a good idea. Why doesn't my brain come up with good ideas like this? Anyways, let's just keep on spinning here. We've got Focus is next. Hopefully Focus is still around here. If so, I'm about to play his beat. Here we go. focuses very esoteric beat there. Oh yeah, I remember. I feel like pirating isn't as big as it used to be, especially for adults. I'm sure plenty of teens still do it, but that almost guarantees a sale when they get a job as they test it. Yeah, I'm hoping that is what happens. I feel like overall, just the amount of piracy in terms of like movies, and maybe I'm wrong, but there's just a lot more people that are like, yeah, I'm willing to like, pay for Netflix, or, even torrenting and stuff. I used to be a big torrenter, so maybe that's why there's like a skew in my perception. But nowadays, not so much. I made the decision eventually to just be like, I'm going to pay for my movies. I'm a big movie lover, so it's kind of shitty for me to pirate movies. Same thing with music. That was the first thing that I started buying CDs as soon as I got a little bit of money. Same thing with plugins now. So yeah, I feel like as soon as you get a little bit of money, I think a lot of people feel as though they want to support, especially if it's from like a creator. But who knows? Maybe there are people out there that are specifically going to pirate from me because they are people who dislike me. That is possible. This is very interesting. Not sure what the POI is. It feels like a collection of too many ideas. Really cool melodic sounds. And that low end rumble is a bit too much sound wise, not necessarily the actual low end. Drum pattern is very interesting. I'm scared, says Sweet Steez. I agree. I really like how unique it is and the interesting textures, but not sure the POI either or the direction of the beat. 4 a.m. at the rave type of beat. Definitely the second half seems a bit more interesting, but a strange repetitive randomness to it. Awesome sound selection. I think just more confusing from a traditional music standpoint. Interesting thumbnail. Just saw this story description as wild as the beat. And yet most software and services are pirated in countries like Brazil since companies don't adjust prices, and a AAA video game costs almost 20% of the average monthly wage. Yeah, it's interesting. I think for me, I guess, with a plugin, I don't think I'm going to have the ability to have sort of territorial pricing. Maybe Shopify does. I don't know. I'll have to look into that. But yeah, I fully expect a lot of people in like, third world countries and stuff to pirate this thing. That's just something I'm just going to have to face. That's same thing that happened with my course, I believe. I think it was pirated a bunch of times. But, the people that did that, were they ever going to pay for it? Probably not. Bird calls freak me out, man. Well, now we have Plex and Jellyfin, so you just set up your own streaming service for very cheap free. But yeah, the creators, I always support Screw Hollywood, though. Torrent for days. What is Plex and Jellyfin? I'm not even sure what those are. Are these on his mic? I thought they would be outside my porch and coming through the window. So yeah, with his beat, I appreciate the unique drum pattern and a lot of the unique ideas. I kind of like that sort of flute idea here as well. But as you guys mentioned, like there's just a little bit too much unorthodox stuff going on in this beat. It doesn't really necessarily feel musical, especially the low end. It just feels like a random rumble. So I do feel as though there is an idea in here with that flute and the drum pattern, but I think the bass line just needs to be, somewhat more melodic because it just sounds like random noise. And I think the sounds do need to take up more space as well because everything feels very dark and there's nothing that feels bright. There's a little bit of a lack of depth as well. Yeah, just a lot of short, repetitious ideas that kind of don't feel like they're going anywhere melodically. So yeah, I think just this beat sort of needs the fundamentals in place of like, are the spaces being filled? Do they have a diversity of, pattern complexity? I think that focus just needs to go, make sure the fundamentals are in place. Because this beat sort of feels as though there's a lot of spaces that are missing and a lot of sort of incomplete ideas that sort of need to be explored and fleshed out a little bit more. Territorial pricing can be used via VPN. Interesting. How does your course even end up to torrent? Would that mean someone just bought it and screen recorded and seeded it? Yeah, I think so. Someone just downloaded all the videos one by one, all the samples as well, and just uploaded it onto a pirating website. But I mean, I don't know. A lot of people think this is something that is interesting, where I've been thinking about this recently, where it's just like there are certain people that are willing to just learn via spending a lot of time. And I think, if you're 16 years old, all you have is time. Your time is kind of like worthless. So if you're willing to sit there and watch endless amounts of videos and try everything yourself, that's definitely a valid way of doing it. But I think for a lot of people who are here right now, like, your time is money. Your time is very valuable. And so getting a very sort of personalized experience where you get these reviews on your specific beats, you're in a community where you can ask questions and get direct answers for you, what you need help with. I think that's fundamentally what a lot of people pay for. Even as good as the videos are that I can make them, are they going to be something that is unpiratable? Like, never. And so I'm trying to figure out the best method that I can to make the value of this course the thing that you can't pirate. Yeah, it's sort of hard to get that across, but yeah, hopefully that makes sense. Yeah, let's keep on spinning. So yeah, the summary on Focus's beat is making sure you always have the fundamentals in place, even if it's an unorthodox idea, and you're trying to break rules, which I definitely appreciate. My opinion here is that there are still things that need to be in place, sort of pillars that need to be upholding the sort of foundation of your beat. And yeah, that applies no matter how weird or unorthodox of an idea you may have. Marvin's up next. Cat, unfortunately, gets betrayed by the wheel. Let's see what Marv has for us here.
That's correct, Wendy. We all wear masks. Metaphorically speaking.
All right, that was Marbello's beat there, called Rum Days. Plex and Jellyfin, I was thinking all-in-one thing. But it is pirating, basically. Interesting take on the drums, says Sherb. I like the POI, would like it to be a bit louder. Switch up is nice, but it feels like a completely different beat. I like the second beat more to my taste. Drums feel too drunken for me. So yeah, I think with this beat, I get the feeling that this was...
We all wear masks.
So it's a good loop here that was used. There's this sort of... Yeah, I sort of feel like the good sounding loop here. I really like the bass line that was added by Marv. I also enjoyed the secondary sounds that sounds like he himself has added to the beat. I feel like they fit well. Like that vocal as well as like that small little, I don't know what it is, synth there. That synth there. I think all those sound good. To what Sherb mentioned, we also have like a second beat that feels very different. Hear bird sounds here, but it feels like overall with both beats, the drum positioning is kind of off, like we talk about in the program. Drums typically need to be a little bit more forward in your beat for a hip-hop beat. There are times when they can be a little bit secondary, and there's a whole movement of like drumless beats, but I do feel as though with this idea, this is calling for stronger drums in this situation. So yeah, I think just processing a little bit of volume control would be enough to get this beat to sound full and complete. Outside of that, I do feel like the loop, everything else, sound selection is on point. Bass line is pretty good. So yeah, very... strange approach to the drums here that I do feel sort of undermines the beat and makes it not feel quite full. Oftentimes with those sort of drumless beats, like the actual sample itself is so like forward and in your face that it creates a different kind of balance. But with the loop here, you have like a lot of sounds that are sitting in the background, and so you sort of need to position those drums a little bit more forward in this case. I don't think this is a case where like a drumless type of idea would work with this type of loop. Same thing with this one, just a lot of sounds that have like a lot of washed out feel to them. So the drums being a little bit more forward would be more helpful. I like the idea of the switch up with the vocal skit, but it felt a little bit too loud and jarring. Agree with kind of the POI while the drums are playing at least. Maybe too much rum. I like the way it started, but wanted something more. The birds should have been pushed back a bit as they stand out too much. Yeah, that's fair enough. I think those small details, while for the most part have good positioning, there are small ones that just sit in wrong places, I guess. So I think Marv overall, just the idea of understanding depth, where sounds should sit, I think that's going to be important. It's hard to know. I get the sense that both beats were made by using loops. So I think I always encourage people to, loops can be a good way to start your beat making journey and end your beat making journey, in that, once you start learning the very core fundamentals, it's hard to put a full beat idea together. So loops can be good whenever you want to learn how to practice, building drum patterns and adding sounds and whatnot. And it's also good for later on when you want to focus on being productive and working with rappers and you want to get your ideas built very fast. But when you're in that learning phase in the middle, I do think that eventually moving away from using loops and building that skill set yourself to build your own loops and really create your own ideas from scratch. For me, that's what I value. I think this is something that I've been thinking about a lot recently. I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts, where for me, whenever I look at producers, feels like for a while there was like a stretch where every single time I'd look at a producer's profile on Twitter, like everyone was somehow like a multi-platinum producer. But every single time like I would look up one of these guys, it would seem as though their participation inside of a beat was like they were one of 6 producers, and they just did like the hi-hat pattern, for example. And for me, I personally have a little bit more of a, I respect people who build the ideas. I'm a product guy. And so when it comes to what I personally am impressed by, it's people who are making their own full beat. And, if they produce for an artist, it's just their name in the track list. They don't have like 30 other guys with them. But I don't know. Sometimes I get the sense that the newer generation, maybe they don't value that as much. Maybe all they sort of value is, are you on albums or not, regardless if it's your idea or not. For me, at that point, you're succeeding not by your ideas, but your ability to sort of network and progress in a business sense, which is a skill on its own. I won't deny that. But for me, as someone who just loves the art of it, I tend to find myself not really being impressed by that type of person. It's sort of the same way how there are people, well, I won't even get into that. But yeah, I'm curious to hear what your guys' thoughts are on that. I use a loop for mine because I didn't have much time, or at least thought because the stream got pushed out, but was still 50-50 loop in my added elements. I stem out most of my melodic stuff and as a loop and reuse them when I have beat block. I should also point out that like a lot of my favorite producers, they sample and stuff. So it's not as if I'm against the idea of pre-made ideas or using sort of bigger pieces for your beat. I like when people use samples, use loops, but they really sort of change the ideas and create their own ideas with them, as opposed to, like I mentioned, just someone who comes in, sort of adds a hi-hat pattern and says, I'm a producer. You're not really creating an idea there. You're supplementing someone else's idea. And to me, that's just not something that I am personally as impressed by compared to someone who's building something on their own, taking a loop or a sample or building it from scratch and creating something that is their own vision from the ground up, or, even just using pieces. As long as it's their idea, I think that's what personally impresses me more. I agree with the sentiment, but I also have more fun building from scratch and pushing my ideas. I find dragging in 4 loops, arranging and calling everything done very boring. In general, I think the bigger names get more beats done and the smaller names get some exposure, though I think personally the bigger names gets most of the credit, even if he didn't do much on the beat. Yeah, I think what a lot of, even this is my impression when I first started, that you sort of work your way up, that if you work, you do these small little tasks, maybe you get less of a percentage, that the next time around that person will, think of you, and then you'll be in the sort of winner's circle, and that is how you succeed. That probably was true for a time. Like, for example, when you think about how Pharrell and Timbaland started their producing career, they worked underneath other producers. And eventually, they got the opportunity to produce for certain artists that would come in. But does that really happen nowadays? I don't think so. I sort of think the paradigm has shifted. I don't necessarily think that. I remember sort of reading this guy talk about his experience producing on a Lil Wayne album. And he had much of the same experience, where he was one of the producers amongst, I think, 3 or 4 who produced on a song that was on the Carter 4 or 5. Lil Wayne was huge at this time. And he even said that, like, as soon as the song came out, nothing really happened. Like, no one was knocking on his door. No one wanted anything else from him, and nothing changed. And I think a lot of the producers who are sort of constantly, let me get on this loop, let me add this little sound here, they think that as soon as their name shows up on like a future album, that people are going to be calling them up for work and think, oh man, this guy, he's on Future's album, I want to work with him. But I kind of don't think that's the case. I don't see the sort of industry working out like that. For the most part, no one really cares about like what have you produced on. I don't know, I may be misreading it though. I'm sort of on the outside looking in, so to some degree, what the hell do I know? But to what Marcus's point was with the sort of bigger names, like the bigger names that are already big, and so as long as they keep their sort of name circulating, they get a benefit from it. But the smaller names, I don't think they quite get the value that they think they're getting by just agreeing to, produce for a rapper, be one of 20 names on the track list. I don't think they get the value that they might have once gotten from being like protege and having a mentorship like that. I don't think so either. They still just call the bigger names at the end of the day, at least for the industry. Yeah, because for the most part, this goes to what we talked about of like, why would someone choose one producer over another? Obviously, if the beat quality or the sort of idea matches to their vision, that is probably the most important. But also it's just like, well, if I have this producer's name on my credit list, is it actually going to get people to pay attention and give this beat more of a chance, or actually like go out of their way to see, oh, so-and-so produced this? And then you sort of get equity as an artist from, or you get value from an artist standpoint by having those bigger names on your track list. But I mean, that takes an incredibly long time to build. And I even think nowadays more and more that's extremely harder to build, just because there's so many producers who can say, yeah, I produced on this person's album and that person's album, but it's like, well, what does that really mean? And I also think that attention is just so fractured that it's hard to build that through someone else's platform. The good news is that you can build your own platform and you can build your own name up that way. I think we've sort of seen that with, guys like Kenny Beats, for example, who had that really interesting run where I wouldn't go as far as saying that his name rung out because he was producing on like the biggest artists' albums. He created his own platform, created his own form of entertainment. And I think that's enough to build your own audience. And all of a sudden, if I'm an artist and I see, Kenny Beats is charging me so-and-so for a beat, but if I work with him, now I have his huge audience of people that are actually going to listen to the beat. So that's value for an artist. And I think, as I always say, like that is what producers should be thinking about more and more going forward, of building their own fan base. And even when you look at what The Alchemist is doing, like he puts out his own music, his own albums, he creates merch, he has his own miniature label fundamentally. So yeah. Anyways, that was just a little bit of a tangent there. Let's continue on with these reviews. Cat betrayed once again. Instead, we have Neuraldy, who hasn't been around for a while. So let's see what Neuraldy's got for us. not necessarily a beat, I would say. I really like the idea, and that bass especially has great energy. Feels to just be missing some air. Beat feels kind of stuffy. And RG, love the bass synth. Could do without the vocal sample. Crazy energy in this. Agreed, says Sherb. So yeah, I think that like this feels very unusable for an actual beat, I would say. Like the BPM of this is pretty crazy. And just the amount of like small little abrasive sounds coming constantly in and out. That vocal sample as well. This to me feels like it's music from like a chase scene in a movie. But if this was a beat, I think just way too fast, and also the sounds that are being used here, they're constantly playing, they're very highly sustained, take up a lot of room. So yeah, if this was a beat, I would say pretty much unusable. So I'll take it as like a sort of music piece meant for like a movie or something. I think the arrangement was good in that things kept moving and kept changing. I just think that, using more different pieces just so you have more moves that you can make with your arrangement would probably be a better idea, just because there's only so much you can do with this big, huge synth bass. You can pitch it up and down, you can like filter it, but after a while, it's like the same thing over and over again, and you find yourself having a lot less space to actually add in more. So I think just creating an idea that is built up of various smaller pieces, as opposed to just filling your beat up immediately using one huge sound. While that is an easy way to get your beat to sound full, you'll quickly notice that there's far less you can do with it, just because it becomes incredibly difficult to take that sound out and remove it with something else if it's such a central piece in your beat. Definitely a standalone project, said Cora. But as you guys said, really cool energy to this. Like I mentioned, it feels like it's from a sort of chase scene in a movie. But not 100% something that I would say works as a beat. All right, let's just keep going here. Next up, we have Victor. Is Cat gonna be last? Who knows? We gotta keep on spinning to find out. All right, never mind. No Victor there. Unfortunate. So, it looks like we'll get through the rest of these beats probably. So, Cora, you can just stick with the Friday stream list that you have. Ooh, Cat does get chosen. So, is Cora going to be last? My God. So, Cat did admit that he layered his kicks. Truly unethical, but let's see what happens here. That's the bbHang Shuffle by Cat. A really cool idea there. Groovy. Love the bass line. This has a classic Silver Age feeling for me. I love it. The bass line slaps. Really great vibe to this. This is funky. I dig it. Yeah, everyone enjoys this really funky beat, as do I. First, I want to say really good drum pattern here. Really great amount of detail. You can hear there's multiple snares that were used, and that can go such a long way in creating a drum pattern that feels like it's an actual drum player with a drum set. So you can hear those first two snares. They're like sort of higher pitch, and then the last two sort of drop. And I believe that comes from just how diverse that drum sample was that I gave you guys. So good job with doing that, Cat. I really like these sounds and ideas that were constantly coming in and out. And I think it worked best because, like we talked about before, there's still a constant layer that's playing throughout the entire beat, which is that sort of warped, sort of, I think it's like a key, electric keys in the low end there, low mid. And so we get like an array of sounds coming in and out. We get those sort of strikes, the guitar there. We get that cool little plucked synth there. But yeah, just because there's this sort of constant layer playing throughout, it doesn't feel like we're hearing a new beat all the time. It's more so the same idea, but it just works because there's a constancy to it. Like you guys mentioned, I really love that bass line as well. Feels very, reminds me of, what's that game called again? Jet Set Radio. So yeah, really awesome, really fun. I think the one thing I probably would say is a little bit more brightness on the drums. Just to bring them forward a tiny bit. Yeah, I think that would improve the beat a bit. But overall, fun idea there. Good execution by Cat. Let's see if Korra gets chosen, or is it going to be the immortal Abadi? Korra does get chosen. So Abadi will be last. All right. Here we go. Let's see what Korra has come up with. was Oasis by Cora. Already digging it. Great sound selection. Really good work chopping up the drums. Drums are tight. So there's this weird tension created by the main melody, vocal sample keys, and dark bass. It's a light, vibey beat battling a dark sub, but it works. This is really impressive. The drums are going in. It has a chill on the beach, but you might get stabbed vibe. Really digging the drum work. So Coney Island. Such an interesting juxtaposition of vibes. Yeah, I definitely know what you mean. At first, I was like, that sub feels, that sort of bass feels very different than like what everything else is doing, but I actually really liked it. Yeah, this is a really awesome beat. I loved all the small details. The keys sounded beautiful. The vocals were amazing. I don't really think there was anything that I can say that like jumped out to me as an issue. I think this is probably one of my favorite beats, if not maybe my favorite beat that Cora has submitted. I really have nothing bad to say about it. Good arrangement as well. Just love where everything sits. Good amount of depth to it. Yeah, just such a smooth beat. Maybe one thing, it's like super nitpicky small detail, but I know with the drums that I forced you guys to use, there's like a lot of body to them. Just because they were more boom bappy. Obviously you can hear that Cora, it sounded like he did a lot of pitch shifting, shifted it up so it sounds as though it is more of a sort of trap hi-hat. I think just shaving some of the low end from that hi-hat just because it is playing quite a bit and you don't necessarily need that sort of body with the hi-hat. So you might find that it clears up a tiny bit more space and gets that hi-hat to sit a little bit less forward, which is kind of what you want with the body, just because you don't necessarily need that part of the hi-hat. But yeah, that's just super nitpicky. I think this is just a really awesome, phenomenal beat. Loved it. Great pocket with the drums as well. Getting late here. Have a great day. All right, Kat. Thank you for checking in. Let's finish up with a body's beat there. And we'll call her a day. And like I mentioned, the next challenge is going to be, or next exercise is going to be a free-for-all. So feel free to do whatever you want. A Body's Beat. Interesting. POG, how's it going? Free for all, gotta finish my wife's song, then see what y'all think. Oh, did she start a beat of her own or something? I really enjoy how much open space there is for an artist, but wish some of those background sounds were brought up just a bit more. I like the vibe, but it's a bit too low. Those bells are a bit too upfront and need to be pulled back a bit more for more balance. I think some simple gain staging and possibly some EQ adjustment would let all the spaces fill out wonderfully. Great idea for sure. Yeah, it's an interesting point. I think, yeah, like you guys mentioned, just a little bit of maybe compressing or soft clipping, whatever you want to use on the master, just to bring everything up and together and build a little bit more glue could have been enough to get the beat to sound full, because as of right now, it does feel a little bit lacking, but it might, like you guys mentioned, might be due to just the low volume of everything. Because there are really unique textures within this, like that sort of cool percussive shuffling in the background. Sounds like some filtering was done or something. So yeah, I do think some gain staging is in line here. Not making her when she's been asking for it like a year. Well, there you go, man. So yeah, it's hard to know whether... Like, I like the uniqueness of the textures. It's a really cool main sound to use. The drum processing was really, really on point. Like, the drums feel very different than the actual sample, but it feels very Griselda-esque. So good job there. I would say the synth within this beat didn't really feel like it matched. This one here. Maybe a little bit of processing could help. Yeah, so it's hard to know whether what this beat needs is yet another pattern, because as of right now, we have this very simple POI bell sound or mallet sound that's playing the exact same note. We have this bouncy guitar. I'm wondering if something in between those two patterns, a new sound, would help the beat sound more full, or if it is simply just a matter of bringing everything up and just squeezing things together. That could be enough. So I'd try those two things. A body to see. I tried the second one first. Try just squeezing the entire beat with soft clipping or something on the master. See how that works or how that feels. And then if that doesn't do the job, I think maybe just one more pattern, one more sound within this beat, just to sit in between those two sounds, might be enough. So yeah, that's it for this one. Hopefully you guys had a good time. Like I mentioned, the next one is going to be a free-for-all, so just to make up for the lost time with how late the stream is. So that's going to be on the 21st, and then we'll probably do a beat contest after that. Other than that, though, hopefully you guys had a good Thursday, and hopefully I see you guys next time. Bye for now. Ta-ta!